Though they measured 300 feet overall, the minimum length of the mammal was estimated at more than 350 feet. Now the largest whales, those that are found in the seas around the Aleutian, Kolomak, and Umgullik Islands, are never more than 60 yards long, if so long. These accounts arrived one after another. Fresh observations made on board the transatlantic ship Le Pereire, the running foul of the monster by the Etna of the Inman line, a report drawn up by the officers of the French frigate La Normandie, a very grave statement made by the ship's officers of the Commodore Fitzjames on board the Lord Clyde deeply stirred public opinion. In light-hearted countries, jokes were made on the subject, but in grave and practical countries like England, America, and Germany, much attention was paid to it. In all the great centers, the monster became the fashion. It was sung about in the cafes, scoffed at in the newspapers, and represented at all the theaters. It gave opportunity for hoaxes of every description. In all newspapers short of copy, imaginary beings reappeared. From the white whale, the terrible Moby Dick of the northern regions, to the inordinate kraken whose tentacles could fold round a vessel of 500 tons burden and drag it down to the depths of the ocean. The accounts of ancient times were reproduced, the opinions of Aristotle and Pliny, who admitted the existence of these monsters, and the Norwegian tales about Bishop Pontoppidan, those of Paul Hegede, and lastly, the report of Mr. Harrington, whose good faith couldn't be put in question when he affirmed that, being on board the Castilian in 1857, he saw this enormous serpent which, until then, had only frequented the seas of the old Constitutionnel newspaper. Then broke out the interminable polemics of believers and disbelievers in learned societies and scientific journals. The question of the monster inflamed all minds, the journalists who professed to be scientific, at strife with those who professed to be witty, poured out streams of ink during this memorable controversy. Some, even 2 or 3 drops of blood, for they wandered from the sea serpent to the most offensive personalities. For 6 months the war went on with different success. To the leading articles of the Geographical Institute of Brazil, the Berlin Royal Academy of Science, the British Association, the Washington Smithsonian Institution, to the discussions of the Indian Archipelago, to the Cosmos of the Abbé Moignot, Petermann's Mitteilungen, the scientific chronicles of the best newspapers of the civilized world, the smaller newspapers answered with great animation, their witty writers parodying a saying of Linnaeus, quoted by the adversaries of the monster, sustained that, in fact, nature did not make fools, and adjured their contemporaries not to give the lie to nature by admitting the existence of krakens, sea serpents, Moby Dicks, and other elucubrations of delirious sailors. Lastly, in an article of a much-dreaded satirical journal, the most liked of its contributors hurried over the whole ground, reached the monster, like Hippolytus, gave him his finishing blow, and killed him in the midst of a universal burst of laughter. Wit had conquered science. During the first months of the year 1867, the question seemed to be buried out of sight and mind, when some fresh facts brought it again before the notice of the public. It had then changed from a scientific problem to be solved to a real and serious danger to be avoided. The question took another phase. The monster again became an island or rock. On the 5th of March, 1867, the Moravian, of the Montreal Ocean Company, being, during the night, in 27 degrees 30 minutes latitude and 72 degrees 15 minutes longitude, struck her starboard quarter on a rock which no chart gave in that point. She was then going at the rate of 13 knots, under the combined efforts of the wind and her 400 horsepower. Had it not been for the more than ordinary strength of the hull in the Moravian, she would have been broken by the shock.